Would you be the jerk for telling your partner their pet peeve is inconsequential? We'll get into that in a bit, but first, am I the jerk for making my cousin's pregnant girlfriend sleep on the couch over Thanksgiving? My 38-year-old female, aunt, 60-ish female, hosted Thanksgiving this year at her fairly large house. She was really eager this year to have my mother's family join this year, including me and my sister, her husband, and her kids because haven't seen each other in a while. She was insistent that we all stay at her house so we could spend more time with each other. Before I agreed to go, I confirmed with her that I would be able to sleep in a bed in a room with a door that closes. I'm okay with sharing a bed or a room, but I need an actual bed or a room. I'm the only one of my siblings or cousins who is single or childless or child-free. Because of this, financially, I've been relegated to the living room couch or floor during holidays. It has always sucked. I'm overweight, so I wake up with back pain. I have had air mattresses deflate on me overnight due to a hole. I can't fall asleep until the younger adult family members finish hanging out at 1 a.m. and then I get woken up at 6 a.m. by someone making coffee. People keep on moving my luggage. I get only a couple of hours of bad sleep and wake up in pain. I have pledged myself that if I wasn't able to get a real bed in an actual room, that I would get a hotel room. Thanksgiving week arrives and I'm pleasantly surprised that I was assigned a room and a queen bed to myself. All of the adults had beds they shared with their significant other. It was great for the first night, but the day before Thanksgiving, my cousin, 35-year-old male, arrives with his girlfriend, 28-year-old female who is 6 months pregnant, as a surprise. He had originally told my aunt he wasn't going to be able to make it because of work, but he just wanted to surprise her. But now there isn't enough beds for everyone. My mother said that I could give up my bed to the couple and sleep on the air mattress in the den, but my aunt insisted I stay in my room. My cousin ended up on the couch and his girlfriend on an air mattress. My mother is now lecturing me about being a bad guest. She thinks that I should have insisted that my cousin and his girlfriend take the bed, especially because she is pregnant. Am I the jerk? I don't think OP's the jerk. That said, considering they are pregnant, it probably would have been a much nicer thing to do. But ultimately, especially considering you've been the one that's been sacrificing all those years before, nobody wants to wake up on little sleep with back pain. I just can't really fault OP. Owls and Cardinals commented, "Nah, not the jerk. You weren't a bad guest. You've been given the short stick many times and had needs you helpfully communicated in advance. You could not have anticipated additional guests." I think the only possible jerks here are the cousins with a surprise pregnant girlfriend. It's a nice gesture, but if he wasn't sure there would be room for them to stay, it was crappy of them not to make hotel reservations nearby and graciously decline any offers that your aunt could make room for the unexpected additions. If expecting cousin couple had done that, this would have been a non-issue. I don't feel you should have insisted on giving up your spot over this. Edit, I originally felt that there were no jerks, but I agree with others that your mom volunteering your space and then giving you a hard time is jerk-ish. And secondarily, the surprise guests expecting accommodation without having arranged it in advance also are. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy getting to decide whether or not all of these people are jerks, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below. That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my niece I don't want her boyfriend in the house I gave her? I, 30-year-old female, moved out of my hometown and let my niece, 20-year-old female, live in my house. She just had a baby and they needed the space and the house was just sitting there because I haven't gotten it sold yet. She's currently not working because she just had the baby, but her boyfriend is. The boyfriend had been telling her he's handling the bills, but has been lying and their lights just got turned off. Turns out he never switched the bill to their name from mine, but has been telling everyone he did. At this point, I know it was foolish to never check and be sure it was switched, but at the time I took him at his word. I can pay the bill, it's not an issue. The issue is the lack of responsibility and the lies. I no longer trust this person, and regardless of if my niece stays with him or not, I don't want him in my house any longer. This is not a tenant-landlord situation. They don't pay me rent, they're just supposed to pay the bills that they incur each month. My niece was unaware because he was lying to her as well. She was just as blindsided by this as I was. I'm willing to let my niece stay there, granted she gets a job and pays the bills. Am I the jerk for wanting to kick him out? Honestly, I think it would be crazy if OP didn't want to kick them out at this point. They're not paying for anything, and not only that, they lied about paying for stuff. How do you redeem or look past that? How do you accept this person just mooching? 1962 Michael commented, "Not the jerk for wanting the man to be responsible, or for being disappointed in him not paying the bill, and not the jerk for expecting them to pay the bills in order to stay there. However, your title is a little misleading since you're saying you gave her a house. You didn't. This is a tenant-landlord situation, you're just not charging rent. You own the house, and they're living in it. Lease or no lease, they have or are about to have tenants' rights. Then you would need 60 days or whatever in order to evict them. Your niece is not off the hook here. If you lied to her, that's one thing, but she either knew he didn't switch the bill or should have. Your contract was with her, and it was her responsibility to make sure the bills were paid, even if she isn't the one earning the money. So don't blame just him. If you do kick him out, then they either break up or she goes with him. I don't think you should be splitting up this young family over this. She's got it hard enough as is. My advice is not to pay the bill. Let them figure it out, or if you want help, get the money from him and then make sure he switches the bill to his name." OP responded saying, "If they don't pay it, I'd have to because it's in my name and on my credit." I did have a talk with her about making sure things are being taken care of regardless of what he says, and I learned the lesson myself because I took him at his word and I shouldn't have. I should have been checking too. We're both at fault for that, I think. I wasn't trying to be misleading, I just didn't think of myself as a landlord in any sense because I didn't require her to pay me rent, just pay the bills. This next story is, am I the jerk for threatening my roommate with eviction for moving her boyfriend in? My girlfriend and I live in a 2-bedroom apartment together and had to get a new roommate. 2 months in of being here, she brings her boyfriend here, introduced us, and that's it. He had stayed past a week and we just thought he was on a vacation or something. He's been here for a month. Turns out he thinks he lives here. He's nearly 30, has no car, no job, and no respect. He sits in her bedroom 24/7 even when she's not here, playing video games and yelling, using up our toilet paper, body wash, electricity, stealing our food, etc. We overheard him talking badly about all of us and him claiming he lives here and isn't leaving. Not to mention he's been in the bathroom every morning we have to get ready for work. In short, we told her he had to leave. He makes us uncomfortable, he's disrespectful, and a leech that is no longer staying with us. She said she was going to take him home. 3 days later, he's still here and comes and makes a childish apology, stating he says things without thinking. The next day, once again, he's sitting in the room making noise while she's not here. I had to threaten her with an eviction if she did not take him home soon. Am I the jerk for being uncomfortable with this unwanted stranger in the house? OP's not the jerk here. They're not on the lease, right? They're not a part of this living situation. There's no reason they should be staying there for any extended amount of time. You know, if this is like weekend visits or whatever, or even maybe slightly more than that, but they come and they go, I would get that, but not this. Fernsword Girl 432 commented, "Not the jerk unless he's legally on the lease, because if he's not, go directly to your landlord. You don't want to get evicted yourself for violating the lease, and they're usually written stating clearly that visitors can only stay for X amount of time. It's not even a question of being a jerk, it's a question of keeping your housing in a very inflated and competitive market. This guy isn't a roommate, he's a parasite. Do it the right way. Tell girlfriend that her boyfriend isn't on the lease, needs to leave, and then you vet a real roommate, follow up on references, make sure they can pay the first and last in utilities, before then asking your landlord for permission to add them to the lease." This next story is, am I the jerk for not letting a stranger borrow my address as a family favor? My aunt reached out on Thanksgiving and asked for a favor. My family was close with relatives when I was young. I haven't seen them for 10 years and generally don't keep any regular contact. This aunt sometimes texts or calls on holidays. She's hoping to buy out a small restaurant that she's worked at for the past 7 years. The owner keeps going back and forth about selling because profits are good. There's just one cook, so he's an essential part in keeping the restaurant run smoothly. The cook is in the process of getting a marriage green card, but the process is taking a while and his driver's license is expiring next month. Aunt lives in Texas, I'm in Washington. This cook paid a broker years ago to help him get a Washington's driver's license. Easier for non-citizens, so my aunt wants me to help renew this cook's driver's license by letting him borrow my address because a valid Washington address is required. The new license will be sent there by DMV, and someone needs to forward the license to where the cook actually lives. I asked why he couldn't use the address he already has on his current license. She said it costs money, a couple thousand. I'm not sure why she's concerned over this cook's personal problems, but I'm assuming from the circumstance that she thinks she needs to do him a favor as an incentive for him to continue working as the restaurant's cook, even after she buys out the business. Still undetermined. Or maybe the owner requested it. She was overall pretty vague about the why, and just said that this favor is really important to her and her potentially future business. I, in a roundabout way, told her I'm not sure about letting a stranger use my address to be put on his license. Pretty sure this is illegal, so it might be best for everyone to just have him figure it out on his own, even if it will cost money. My aunt hasn't responded to me since. I'm 200% sure she's calling me a cold, heartless witch behind my back with the other aunts and my mom. Side note, I've cut off communication with my mom completely a couple years ago because I couldn't handle her toxic, selfish, and judgmental presence in my life anymore. I talked to my dad about the situation, hoping to get some support, but he doesn't think that it's a big deal and why not help out a family, but do what I want. His tone implied that I'm overreacting. So now I'm second-guessing everything and thinking, am I overreacting? Am I the jerk for not doing this for family? I haven't slept well all weekend, being anxious and overthinking. I truly need an outside perspective on this because my family uses "because we're family" to excuse everything, and my husband is the only one telling me your fam is not normal. I never discuss family stuff with friends. Am I overreacting for thinking this is illegal and not agreeing to the favor? Is this really not a big deal kind of thing and I wasn't being considerate enough about my aunt's situation? Am I the jerk? Thank you in advance. So, just even from the fact that it doesn't feel right, I would say OP's not the jerk. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know if this is or isn't expressly legal or illegal, especially wherever OP is stationed. That said, this situation is definitely the kind of one that would give you the heebie-jeebies, and when you get that kind of unsettling feeling like this does not feel right, this doesn't feel legal, I don't blame you for saying, no, I'm not going to be involved. Review OK929 commented, not the jerk. Don't get involved in shady crap whoever is asking, let alone for a semi-estranged aunt on behalf of a random cook from Texas. And you will not sleep well once you've done it because it will always be nagging you as to when the cops are going to show up at your door. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not letting my wife invite her friends to my shared beach house? After many years of work and a lot of money, my siblings and I built the beach house of our dreams. We're now all trying to figure out how scheduling will work. Who gets which weekends, when it'll be shared, etc. We're also all married, but our spouses don't own any percentage of it. It's evenly divided amongst us three. My sister is planning on inviting her friends for the 4th, as she traditionally has always hosted a 4th of July weekend. I have no issue with this, but my wife is concerned my sister will claim every 4th of July weekend, and she wants to host her own friends sometimes. She asked if maybe this year or next year I could reserve the 4th for her and her friends, and I told her that would be tricky to do and would honestly just be a lot easier for everyone involved if she just picked a different random weekend later in July or August to host them. This upset her, and she basically said that she still feels it would be unfair for just my sister to always get the 4th, and she should at least get it every now and then. She added that she guesses she'll just always have to travel to see her friends on the 4th, and never got to host a group. Before this year, my sister would always host a 4th of July party at our parents' vacation house, which has been in the family for decades. Obviously not as new and fancy, but we've stayed there at the same time with my sister's friends a few times before and always had fun. I told her since my parents' house will no longer be used, we could host all her friends to that one instead, which is in the same area so she wouldn't have to travel and would get to host a group. She said that she doesn't want to just take the house nobody else wants and to forget it. I believe she feels like I wasn't listening to her and was rushing to solutions instead of understanding her issues. I believe there are also some sour feelings related to ownership of the house and the fact that it's technically mine and not hers. Other things in our marriage are shared, so it's not totally balanced between us. For example, I could more easily have friends there any weekend than she could. I don't think OP's the jerk here, and it's really not like this is something that OP themselves is trying to sponsor, especially because I think a key focus here is she wants to host her own friends sometimes. So this isn't like OP's wife and OP's 4th of July party. This is, I want to use you and your siblings' beach house for me and my friends. So much more Eagle commented, not the jerk. She needs to accept that it's not marital property, it's your family's. She can use it, but she doesn't get the same priority or privileges as you and your siblings, like major holiday weekends. If it was a joint party thrown by you and her, it would be different, but it's just for her and her friends. Also, her turning up her nose at another house in the same area just because it's not as nice is very much her looking a gift horse in the mouth. Most people aren't lucky enough to have one vacation house to go to, let alone two. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not forgiving my sister-in-law when she didn't apologize for something she did? Context, I, 31-year-old female, moved to my husband's 31-year-old male country 4 years ago. None of my family lives here, and his family is nearby. I have a good relationship with my mother-in-law and father-in-law, and my relationship with my husband's siblings, female 29 and male 25, is usually good. A few weeks ago, it was my 31st birthday. Last year, my brother-in-law, 25-year-old male, used my birthday gathering to plan his own birthday party. To avoid a repeat, I decided not to make a big deal out of this year's celebration. I didn't want to spend money on a party, and I didn't want the attention to be diverted again. We decided to celebrate at my in-laws' house because they have more space. We invited my husband's siblings and their partners. They arrived late, around 4:30 p.m., which is typical for this family and not a big deal. Since I live in a foreign country, English isn't the primary language. I know the language, but I find it hard to keep up with many fast conversations at once. Everyone spoke in the local language throughout the evening, which made me feel disconnected and overstimulated. Eventually, I gave up trying to keep up and started scrolling on my phone. The issue began when sister-in-law, 29-year-old female, asked if she could show her vacation pictures to everyone. In husband's family, it's common to share vacation photos at gatherings, but the way sister-in-law asked caught me off guard. She asked for my permission in front of everyone, which made me feel obligated to say yes. I found it rude to show vacation pictures at someone else's birthday celebration. I briefly excused myself to get coffee. When I returned, brother-in-law and his girlfriend asked to see our wedding photos, which they hadn't yet seen. Sister-in-law seemed disappointed, and she and mother-in-law went to the kitchen, where they had a loud conversation that we could all hear from the living room. After viewing the wedding photos, we had dinner, and sister-in-law again pushed for us to look at our vacation pictures. She and her husband spent about an hour going through the pictures, explaining each one in detail. Again, it was in the local language, and I struggled to follow. My husband noticed this and told me to put my phone away, which frustrated me further. The last picture they showed was a sonogram and announced their pregnancy. They had many chances to announce this before or after that day, but they chose that moment. I faked a smile, congratulated them, and excused myself to the bathroom. My husband and I left soon after, and he didn't understand why I was upset. In his culture, it's normal to announce major life milestones at other celebrations, but in my culture, it's not. We argued about it for the rest of the night and the next day. An hour later, sister-in-law sent me a text justifying their timing and laughing it off. I responded saying I was happy for them, but hurt by the way they announced it. She later responded claiming they were hurt by my reaction and that my response had cast a dark shadow over their happiness. She didn't apologize but continued to justify her actions. Am I the jerk for not simply forgiving her and moving on? Edit, since this doesn't seem to be clear because I was limited to 3,000 characters and couldn't elaborate, I do speak the local language. Not fluently by a long shot, but I understand significantly more than I can speak. I can follow a conversation and I can hold a conversation. What I can't do is follow 4 simultaneous conversations being held all at once with people shouting across the room towards each other. This is a very common practice for birthdays in this country, the Netherlands. It's called the Ring of Doom. It's the standard layout for birthdays and, by default, the layout that people gravitate towards. As a foreigner, it makes it incredibly difficult to follow any one given conversation at any one given moment, when there are 3 more being shouted across the room. I think it would be difficult to keep up even in my native language, and especially difficult in a foreign one. Edit 2. A lot of people are coming to the conclusion that I expect a huge milestone like birthday celebration for a non-milestone birthday. I just want to say that this isn't the case. I'm honestly more than happy to just not celebrate at all. I don't need presents, I don't like attention, and I don't like the work of organizing events. Birthdays are important to my husband and his family, milestone birthday or otherwise. Every year I'm asked for birthday plans, and every year I put it off as long as possible. After the events of last year, I really put it off till basically the weekend before and relented and said we could just do something low-key at husband's parents' house. Before you guys start telling me that nobody forced me to do it, yes, I know. But I did it because it's important to my husband and his family. That's not to say that if I do go ahead and plan something and set a time aside for it, that time is meant for someone else to just swoop in and use it as a convenience for themselves. I don't really think that's acceptable. The main issue in all of this is that I communicated very clearly to sister-in-law that I was upset by her actions. And rather any kind of acknowledgement of my feelings, she doubled down, justified all of her actions, and then flipped the whole situation around on me and told me how I upset them by casting a dark cloud over their happy news. So I just think considering this is a birthday party for OP and OP's not being considered about in any way, especially if all these people understand OP's not from their culture, I don't blame OP for being upset about it. It's OP's birthday party, right? They should be trying to do what they can to celebrate in the way OP would like. Like at the very least, they could apologize and say, I didn't realize it's even remotely a bad thing in your culture, I'll try to do better next year, or something like that. Background ad 7590 commented, not the jerk. Both parties have a responsibility to research and respect cultures and customs. From what you told us, it sounds like you've done a great job of respecting their customs, even when it's uncomfortable. Where is the return of that energy? Why don't they bother to care about your customs at your celebration? It would be one thing if it were your brother-in-law's party, but it was your party, and you didn't ask for much. Our next story is, am I the jerk for yelling at my partner because I paid them to take care of my cat and house, and instead they made a mess? I paid my partner to look after my cat and take care of my place while I was away for Thanksgiving. I would have paid a cat sitter, but they needed the money, so I figured I would let them stay at mine and pay them instead. I left my place pretty clean. When I came home, everything was just all freaked up. Clothes thrown everywhere, cables from my work desk unplugged and moved, furniture moved, bed not made, bathroom looking nasty. Not exactly looking after the place, more like just living in the place and not cleaning up after yourself. But what ticked me off the most, the cat litter wasn't scooped at all. My cat had just been going on top of the old waste for what looked like the entire 5 days. Initially, I tried to hold it together and not make a scene because my roommate was home and I didn't want to cause a scene, but I just couldn't hold it together anymore. I yelled at her and told her it's just downright disrespectful and crappy to do, to me and to the cat. I feel like the jerk because she started crying, but I feel like I'm right to be upset. Maybe just the way I delivered it and didn't hold it together was the jerk move. I don't know. I'm ticked off. Edit, sheesh, this post kinda blew up. I was expecting like 5 to 10 comments, not like 400. Update, after calming down, she listened to why I and Reddit are upset. She apologized for leaving the place a mess and set the place right afterward. She said she was a bit depressed and just couldn't quite deal with life at the moment after having her hours cut at work. I was trying to help out a bit and that's why I offered to have her stay instead of a sitter, but she totally understands why I was ticked off and was like, yeah, I should have made the place look nice before you came home, because that's respectful. She also profusely apologized for not understanding the automatic litter robot, but I do wish she would have called me if she saw it wasn't working correctly. Cat is okay and happy. While a lot of the comments are more balanced and thoughtful, some are kinda witch hunty and unkind. They're not a bad person overall, but I hope they can learn from this and be more mindful in the future. So it really sounds like OP kinda figured out the answer to their question and had a great resolution to this. Needless to say, especially if you're paying someone, partner or not, honestly, I don't mean to sound callous, but depression, whatever you wanna say, you signed up for it, you should have done at least the bare minimum. And if they couldn't, they should have communicated it. Raven Raving commented, "Not the jerk. Imagine living with someone who treats a home like that when they've accepted payment for caring for it. Imagine living with someone who's cruel enough to not scoop a cat box for 5 days. Wow, is this what you want to sign up for in a long-term relationship?" OP responded saying, "I got together with them when I was 19 and am now 23. It's the only long-term relationship I've been in. But maybe I need to see things for what they are and move on. The litter box is an automatic one that should cycle, so maybe they just didn't realize, but it's not that hard to see, unplug, replug, and press cycle, especially because I asked them to look after the cat. I don't know, it's freaked up." Our next story is, am I the jerk for naming my fantasy football team after my coworker's cat? I have a coworker who's obsessed with their cat, Mr. Whiskers. Every day he won't stop talking about his cat. As a joke, I named my fantasy football team Mr. Whiskers All-Stars. Coworker found out after I told another coworker about it, and you know how the dynamic is, and now he said it was disrespectful. I think it's a harmless joke, but now the office is kind of split over whether I'm the jerk. Am I the jerk for turning the cat into a team mascot? Really, I think it's the spirit behind this that makes OP the jerk. I think if you had a coworker that so dearly loved Mr. Whiskers that you're wanting to make him your team mascot because that's just cute and awesome, that would be one thing, but OP doing it because, this guy's so obsessed with his cat. Can you imagine somebody having that kind of connection with their pet? It's weird, especially the telling a coworker and that guy finding out through the grapevine. Like, just imagine how it feels in that guy's circumstances where he finds out from some random person, "Hey, OP named their fantasy football team after your cat because you're so obsessed with them." How would that make anybody feel? There's nothing wrong with having so much love for Mr. Whiskers. Electrical Quiet 43 commented, "You're the jerk. You identify your coworker as obsessed with his cat, and I think the clearest rationale for naming the team after the cat is that you're poking fun at him for being a cat guy." That type of lightly mocking humor is pretty common in fantasy football, and if he was in the league and you had that dynamic with him, I would feel differently, but based on the way he found out, it sounds like he's not, and it doesn't sound like you have that type of relationship with him. He's catching strays in a way that feels personal to him. Not the end of the world, but one of those things where you could have anticipated this would feel hurtful to him, so you're a fairly light jerk here to me. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my boyfriend, "Your pet peeve is inconsequential," while we were driving? My boyfriend was very upset at me last night because while we were driving, he said his pet peeve is when people drive on the freeway for only one exit. He said it bothers them if they get on the freeway only to get off at the next exit. I said, that is an inconsequential pet peeve because there's no traffic and it has no effect on you. I could tell it bothered him because later in the evening he was cold to me, so I apologized for invalidating his pet peeve. I realized everyone is entitled to their pet peeves, regardless of how they seem to me, but he remained cold the rest of the evening, so I asked if he was annoyed at me and he said yes. I asked him why and he said it was because I got on him earlier about his pet peeve. I said, but I apologized unprompted, and he said he's just going to need more time to get over it. I feel like his continued annoyance is disproportionate to the circumstance. Am I still the jerk here for what I said to him? Edited to add, he was not referring to my driving, he was referring to another car ahead of us that had a small boat secured to its hood. I said, that boat looks like it's not securely attached to that car. And then the car took the very next exit, so I said, at least they're getting off the freeway. Then he said, that's my pet peeve, when someone drives on the freeway for only one exit. So I'm gonna say light jerk here for OP personally. I think OP committed a faux pas that I generally just try to avoid in general, which is immediately just shooting down something another person says, even if like you do kind of disagree with it. Like, I just think when you're on the receiving end of something like that, it just honestly can feel bad. And unfortunately, it can kind of create these connotations with a person like that where you feel like you can't really open up or say potentially menial things like simple pet peeves like that, because they might just try to roll it over or downplay it or say, oh, that's not really much of a thing. Pegging Pinhead commented, I mean, you said yourself that you were the jerk for crapping on his pet peeve, or at least you implied it by apologizing for it. So the question here isn't, am I the jerk for what I said? It's, am I the jerk for being annoyed that my boyfriend is still annoyed? To which isn't really a conflict. P.S. The whole point of a pet peeve is that it doesn't affect you. Otherwise, it's just a peeve. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another tough to answer Am I the Jerk Here story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.